He did all of the important work for that race win in the first stint, and just lap after lap after lap, leaving the rest of the field in his wake.
Hi, I'm Cameron. Today I'm joined by James. We're wearing our winners' t-shirts and we're going to answer your questions about the Las Vegas Grand Prix. James, firstly, congratulations to you and everyone at the team. The W15 showed amazing pace in Vegas and we came away with a fantastic 1-2. So how is everyone feeling?
I can't speak for everyone, but we had a staff debrief earlier which had, I think, most of the factory in it, who were also wearing these lovely things. And the room was buzzing, as it always is after a race weekend where we've done well, and especially so with a 1-2. So I think there's a lot of happiness here.
Do we know where the amazing pace came from, and did the colder weather have anything to do with it?
Well, in that same factory debrief, I started off by, I think my opening words were that it was brilliant, exhilarating, but also annoying. Annoying because we didn't predict the pace that we had this weekend, and one of the main things about being an engineer is to try to get a sense of what's going on with a car, trying to make sure that you understand it and can optimize it, and that involves being able to predict it. And we certainly didn't expect the sort of dominant performance that we showed. There could be lots and lots of reasons for it. You mentioned track temperature. It's an unusually cold environment, racing in the desert in the winter in Las Vegas. But there'll be more to it than that. Be more to it, and I think, you know, the key thing for us to do is to dig into the many different possible explanations over the coming week to see if we can turn that annoyance into a degree of understanding, and then use it to our benefit.
In terms of how the race actually played out, how crucial was George's ability to hold off the Ferraris in the early stages to securing the win?
I think that was pretty important because George did all of the important work in that race in the first stint, and had Leclerc's sort of attempt to get by him, then who knows what might have happened. Leclerc shot his bolt a bit too soon, and his tyres opened up, and what looked like a very bright and well-performing Ferrari in those opening couple of laps very quickly went backwards. The worry for me would have been, had George had a Ferrari in front of him and then had to do the same sort of muscly attempt to get back again to the lead, would he have opened up his front tyres? Would he have suffered the graining that killed Leclerc's race? We don't know, but it was much nicer to emerge from that side-by-side duel that he and Leclerc had with us still in the lead, because from that point forward, it never looked threatening for George. He did all of the important work for that race win in the first stint, and just lap after lap after lap, leaving the rest of the field in his wake.
Yeah, it looked like he was really in control for sort of every lap. In terms of Lewis's weekend, he was a bit disappointed after qualifying, so started P10 on the grid. But just how good was that recovery drive to finish P2?
Yeah, it was great. We have a strategy meeting in the morning, where we set out our plans, what we think might happen in the race, and that normally governs. It normally has a prediction of what the sort of possible outcomes might be. George, we predicted, would be able to hang on to his pole and win with the following wind, but it felt nip and tuck to do that. And Lewis, we knew he would make progress, but we were predicting 6th, maybe 5th. So for him to come through so commandingly into a very strong second place just shows A, how well he drove, and B, the underlying pace in the car. And it was a pleasure to watch.
It's an exhilarating circuit out in Las Vegas. It's incredibly fast. So how did the team come to the conclusion to go with a higher downforce setup?
Well, we did what we always do, and what every team in the grid does. You scan in simulation the wings that you have available. We don't have an infinite number of rear wings. We have a certain number: high, medium, low, and the simulation will tell you which one looks the most promising, and we pick the most promising. And although it's a topic that is endlessly agonized over by journalists and drivers alike, actually it normally doesn't make a huge amount of difference which wing you pick, within limits. So you could go a bit bigger than we went, you could go a bit smaller than we went, and the overall lap time is pretty similar. If you go bigger on the wing, the DRS effect generally gets bigger, but you're slower from the outset with that bigger wing. If you go smaller, you're faster on the straights, but the DRS effect gets smaller. And the lap time is normally quite flat with these variations. We just picked the one that looked best in our simulation, and in the end, although overtaking wasn't easy, Lewis showed that it was possible, and I think it was reasonably well judged.
Absolutely. Now, I think most people up and down the paddock were predicting a one-stop race, but it turned into a two-stop. What were the main reasons for that?
Whether you get a one-stop race or a two-stop race is entirely down to the degradation on the tyres. And if the degradation, how much slower with each passing lap the tyre goes, if that is high enough, then the race swings from one-stop territory towards two-stop. It makes sense to incur the loss of the extra pit stop to have the benefit of the fresher rubber. And we went into the race completely open-minded as to whether it would be a one or a two, and we saw the way it was unfolding, the degradation that was there, looking at the experience of, say, Perez, who'd started on the hard tyre in the first stint, seeing that he was actually experiencing some degradation. It made us feel like this is likely to go towards a two. And then when our competitors started peeling in for their stops, it was pretty clear that it was a nailed-on two at that point. And the post-race reckoning ends up suggesting it's around about 7 seconds quicker to have elected for the two than to have stuck doggedly to a one.
James, I know that graining was a huge topic for all of the teams over the race weekend in Vegas, but would you mind sort of breaking it down for us in layman's terms, what actually happens to the tyres?
Well, normally when a tyre is running on a track, to generate lateral force, to generate cornering force, the tyre needs to slide across the surface gently, and then the rubber resists that sliding, and that's what creates the force that allows you to turn. When you have a normal tyre doing that normally, that sliding just gradually abrades the surface of the tyre, just sort of like sandpaper, just gradually takes the surface of the tyre down. And it doesn't, as it does that, the tyre gets a bit thinner, but it doesn't fundamentally change its performance. Eventually the rubber will wear out and you'll need to come in for new stuff. Graining is a very different thing. When you have a tyre that is where the surface of the rubber is gripping the track really well, and it does in Las Vegas, and where the temperature is cold, you get a different type of wear and failure for the tyre. You get a thing called graining, and that's because the surface of the rubber is sticking like glue to the asphalt. The car is pulling at that rubber really, really hard, and the rubber is colder than normal because the track is, the air temperature and the track temperature in Vegas is cold. That makes the rubber a bit more brittle. And instead of it just being gently sanded down as it goes round the corners, you can get to the point where the rubber that is contacting the road just sticks there, and the rest of the tyre and the car tears physically away from it. And instead of just abrading the surface of the rubber, it tears the top layer of the tyre away, and that's called graining. That's where you'll hear the driver saying, oh no, the front tyres have opened up. And what they mean is, instead of having that nice aspect where you can see that it's being scrubbed, you suddenly see the tyre being literally torn up by the surface of the road. That's called graining. It massively reduces the performance of the tyre. Instead of it losing hundredths of a second a lap, you can be losing half a second a lap by virtue of this mechanism, and it completely wrecks your race run and your prospects. So the drivers try to drive up to that graining limit at a track like Vegas, but not beyond it.
A really impressive performance by the whole team over the weekend. So what can we expect for the next race in Qatar?
Well, I started this conversation by saying it was annoying, as well as brilliant and exhilarating, the result this weekend. And the annoyance came from not predicting accurately what would happen in Las Vegas. So it's with a degree of trepidation that I would venture any particular opinion about what's going to come in Qatar. What I would say is that this season has shown over and over again the virtuous circle that there is between car balance and tyre degradation. Get the car nicely balanced and you will tend to have the tyres working well for you. If the tyres are then working well for you, they tend to make the car balance feel good, and it just goes in a lovely direction for you. The same is true in reverse. Get the car balance out of whack and the tyres die horribly, making the balance worse and worse and worse. So if we're able to achieve the sort of sweet balance that we had in Las Vegas, we'll have a great weekend. If we don't, we won't. And I would say that there are aspects of Qatar that would lend us some encouragement. Like Vegas, it's a very smooth track. The corner that we were mighty in Vegas was turn 3. There's a lot of turn 3 type corners in Qatar, and there isn't a huge amount of slow stuff in Qatar, so we should be able to get the car reasonably in its window, but you know, we've been wrong before. So I'm going there, well, we're going there cautiously optimistic, hoping that we can sort of get through these last couple of races in the year, with Qatar being at the strong end of our performance.
Just 2 races to go after an incredibly long season. We know we're going to finish P4 in the constructors' standings. So how much of the focus shifts towards developing the car for next year?
The focus for next year has been there for ages. The last significant upgrade was in Austin. The specification of that Austin was around about in the summer. Then you have to make it and put it on the car. So the lion's share of our efforts have been on next year for some time. And indeed, a growing amount of our efforts are even looking further afield to 2026. But these last 2 races are important, nevertheless, also for next year, because they teach you things. They teach you things about the tyres, about the setup, and about the weakness of your current car that you are attempting to design out for the next one. So although the vast majority of the factory is head down on future cars, there's still real value in putting a lot of effort in trying to make these races go well, not just because we like wearing these t-shirts, but because they are also in some small way the foundation for the year that follows.